Hello, everyone. My name is Gitika Gorthy, and today I'm very, very excited and honored to be interviewing a very special space champion whom I greatly admire and look up to, Miss Sharon Hagle. Miss Hagle is the CEO and founder of SpaceKids Global. SpaceKids Global's mission is to bring the possibility of space to kids everywhere by inspiring students to excel in STEAM environmental education, ensuring girls are equally represented. Furthermore, Miss Hagle is an astronaut completing her flight on Blue Origin's NS-20, which launched March 31st, 2022, as a member of Crew 4. Joining her on the flight was her husband, making them the first married couple to fly to space on a commercial vehicle, along with four other crew members. After reading Ms. Hagle's incredible journey into the space industry, as well as the work that she's doing to inspire and empower the next generation of diverse aerospace leaders, I was immediately inspired and knew I wanted to speak with her about her journey and the work that she's doing. So, welcome, Ms. Hagle. Thank you so much for taking your time to inspire the next generation of aerospace leaders.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I love talking about space, particularly with young women. That's exactly who we want to see more of in the space industry.
Yeah, I'm so excited, and I heard about the work that you're doing, especially with the Girl Scouts and Citrus Council. And I was a Girl Scout myself from kindergarten all the way through my senior year of high school. So I just really admire the work that you're doing. But before we get into a little bit of your outreach endeavors, I have to start off by asking, what was your first reaction when you found out that you were officially going to fly to space? And what was the process like becoming an astronaut?
Oh, I think there were two words. First of all, we were shocked and excited. We had been working with Virgin Galactic back in 2007 with Richard Branson, and then we were working with Blue Origin about 2 or 3 years before they went to the auction. So to be a part of that early on was so exciting to be able to help people understand what space is going to be all about for most of us, and gathering the data in order to bring it back. We did a lot of space training. We flew out of Kennedy Space Center on a zero-G mission. We have trained with NASA up in Philadelphia on the centrifuge training. And then we had an opportunity to go to Star City, Russia, and train with the Russian cosmonauts, which is a whole different program. They approach space differently. But as everyone knows, that you have to, if you're a NASA astronaut, normally until SpaceX was available, they had to go to Star City and launch from that facility.
And what was your, experience actually launching into space? I mean, when you went up there and you saw Earth from this view, which you've been anticipating for years, and when if initially decided you wanted to fly to space, what was that moment like when you finally got there and was able to see Earth from this completely unique perspective that nobody else really can view and understand or comprehend unless they go to space? What was that feeling like for you?
Everyone wants to know, what was it like? And there are no words. There's no words in any language that can describe what you have seen with your own eyes. It is the most emotional and spiritual journey I have ever taken. And I still get energy surges every time I start to talk about it, because there's triggers that still, when I feel and see and watch those rocket launches, it takes you back just like that. And it's once you look out the window back down on Earth, you realize how fragile our planet is and how thin that atmosphere is. And it changes you. You have a responsibility to come back and make the world better.
I've heard so many different astronauts. Like I watch these videos, these clips, and I think it's just incredible how when you go up there, it's such a surreal moment, but also all of the work that the astronauts, including yourself, are doing to bring this experience and share your stories and share your enlightenment with other folks is so incredibly important. So before we get into some of the outreach work you're doing, especially with SpaceKids Global, I wanted to ask about the astronaut training component. I feel like right now space is always historically been so constrained and limited to a certain folks. But now that commercial space has opened it up to so many different age groups, different geographic locations, and backgrounds of education, do you think the astronaut training that you completed was accessible in a way that anybody could potentially access space in the future? Or do you think we need to continue improving the current commercial astronaut training procedure to make it more accessible for everyone?
Well, there's two points. One, when I'll go back to when we were in space, what was the most surprising? That space is pitch black. There's no light reflection, there's no stars. That's all Hollywood. Uh, what do I think about the training? I think as we move forward and more civilians, more people that are trained to go into space, things are going to change, because even when we got back to Earth, we had a 2-hour exit strategy where they gathered all this information, all this database from the time we arrived at Astronaut Village, from the time we stepped into the astronaut training facility. They wanted to know about the training. They wanted to know all about our suits. These are the actual suits, and they are fire resistant. So living in Florida, that works perfectly on a day like this where the temperature was in the 40s. Let me tell you, it's a diet plan when it's in the summer. So all this information is getting gathered for future flights. And the more people that go into space, the better they can gather more data, and training will change. It wasn't required for us to go to Star City. We had an opportunity and we took it. As far as a suborbital flight, we were well prepared, and particularly with Blue Origin. People say, were you nervous? I have to say no. You know, I'd had 16 years to think about maybe going to space, and when the time came, it was just so exciting.
Finally the moment happened, and the trust that Blue Origin has had so many incredible flights, and it's just, yeah, it's a magical experience. I can really tell from your emotions as you're speaking about it that it was truly like an incredibly enlightening moment for you and a pivotal moment in your life. So that's incredible. And a lot of times in your responses, you're constantly mentioning the importance of outreach and sharing this message to others. And I follow you on LinkedIn. I noticed you do so many incredible outreach events targeting so many young students. So could you share a little bit more about the work that SpaceKids Global is doing, as well as what was your inspiration for starting this organization? I think it takes a lot for someone to dedicate so much of their extra spare time to going out into different communities and sharing their work. So what was that aha or that motivation that kind of drove you to starting this organization? And what are some of the initiatives that you're doing right now?
Well, I think it all began really with Richard Branson as we were sitting around just brainstorming. And this was back when he first started Virgin Galactic. And nobody at that time was talking about elementary schools kids, because most scholarships are high school, college, which God bless, you know, I'm so excited for those people to be able to receive extra help with scholarships. So I'm not saying anything against that. But Richard wanted to start a charity that would enhance kids. And so we started talking about it. And one of the arms was education. And they were focusing on high school and college. And nobody was really focused on elementary school kids. And then I had an opportunity to read the International Educational Forum, which in the past, US had always been at the top 5. And all of a sudden, we were ranking 38th in math and 41 in science out of 71 countries. That's insane. So obviously, the educational system wasn't working for the younger kids. And I started doing some research on that, and it was actually formatted for the industrial era, and it hasn't changed. So what we try to do at SpaceKids is get kids excited about their futures in space and maybe living off planet. How are we going to do that? We're going to make them participators, not spectators. We're going to reach out and get some partnerships, just like zero gravity. We had a national essay competition, and the winners got to do a flight on zero gravity to fly like an astronaut. Those kids were so excited. We also, last year, through our partnership with the ISS National Lab, were able to send 21 science projects to the ISS. And those kids got to come to KSC because it was launched over there. It was a SpaceX mission. And I get so emotional because these kids were jumping up and down because their science project, they were watching engines ignite going into space. And what we learned later is NASA now calls them NASA scientists. So here's kids 8 to 12 to 13 years old that are now sending projects to the ISS. It's amazing.
Yeah. I mean, I think I was just like getting emotional just thinking about what those kids are going through. I mean, I got inspired to join space sector because of a rocketry club in middle school. And those are small programs that I was very lucky to have around me. And if we can share these types of rocketry club experiences or some way to interact with the space ecosystem and give students that excitement as well as that confidence to believe that, hey, I can be a rocket scientist. Like, this is something I can be a part of. And just small little things, small little moments like that where you get to do, well, it's not small to send an experiment to space, but just having the opportunity to be able to get involved in the space industry at a young age can really inspire someone to believe that they belong in the space industry. For me, it was the rocketry club. And in middle school, I got the chance, I applied for NASA's Sisters program at Goddard Center, where I got to spend a week at NASA. And that was just the most transformational experience of my life that changed my trajectory forever. And so, if we can provide those experiences to every young girl, to every young student, the future of space will be even brighter and even greater. So I think the work that SpaceKids Global is doing is so critical and so important as we continue to expand. And space is not just for rocket scientists. I think this is something your organization also tries to, share with others. Could you share a little bit more about why you believe space is truly for every background and discipline, not just engineers or, scientists necessarily, but space is so interdisciplinary. So maybe you could share from your experiences why space is so interdisciplinary and its importance to benefiting life on Earth.
Well, I think it starts with everyone. Space is for everyone. We had the opportunity through our donations to send 250 students, fourth grade students, in a Title I school out to Kennedy Space Center to the visitor center. These kids, they only know what they see. And so when you ask them what they want to be when they grow up, it's either a janitor, a teacher, or a cafeteria worker. When they got to KSC, their lives changed. They had no idea. They were so excited. They got back in the bus to come back to their schools, and everybody was buzzing. They all wanted to do something in space. And I think that's the key. These elementary school kids think that the only job in the space industry is an astronaut. And what we have to do is get that message out that what we have here on Earth, we're going to need up there. Doctors, scientists, farmers, mechanics, everything we have here, particularly designers. We're going to need space suits to wear up there. And hopefully one of you guys will be able to design a thorough fire-resistant spacesuit that's 2 portions, a top and a bottom, because we want more women in the space industry. And it's so much more convenient if it's 2-piece.
Definitely. And I think the point that you mentioned about how everything we have on Earth, every job we need in the space industry specifically. I love to think as every company is like a space company, whether it be manufacturing or food science, like all of this different smaller sectors are needed and necessary in the space sector. And just the innovation that comes from the curiosities behind these different space missions that we're doing. Like, for example, every year at the Humans to Mars Summit, they're always talking about how can we get humans to Mars, and we have to answer some very challenging questions for that, which pushes our technological limits and the innovation that we're creating in every sector beyond our imagination. So I think it's incredible how the space industry is evolving, but also rapidly growing in all these different sectors. Yeah, and when you talk, like I can't help but notice how excited you get. And so, what was your aha moment that inspired you to pursue a career or at least be involved in the space industry? What was that journey like for you?
Well, before I answer that, I want to add one other note for your viewers. It's important that people start focusing on STEM or STEAM careers. We've learned now that there's 3.5 million vacancies in the STEM field. That's predicted by 2025, and that's not that far away. So the earlier that we can get people involved in the space industry, the better it's going to be for mankind, because every launch that they do is for the benefit of Earth, and we need to remember that. And while I'm thinking of it, thank you so much for calling people in the industry space champions. That's one of my issues with the media, about the way they're spinning this. I mean, we're all taking risk every time somebody goes up. It's not like a guarantee at Disney ticket where you can buy your ticket, ride the ride, and come back and you're safe. We had to prepare our families before we launched. We had to put our affairs in order. And I think that as soon as the media starts taking this seriously and helping people, private companies, NASA companies, everyone, to get into space for the benefit of Earth, the better it's going to be. And I hate it when they talk about a female astronaut versus a male astronaut. We should all be just astronauts. Let's quit the division. Now, with that out of the way, your question was, how did I get involved? I was sitting in a classroom, totally different from your viewers, and we were listening to a PA system when Alan Shepard was launched in space, being the first American, eek, 1961. And I was in a classroom in West Virginia. So for all of you that think that you'll never have a possibility to do anything in the space industry, you just never know where your life's going to take you. At that point, I thought, oh my, I'm a long way away from Kennedy Space Center. This has nothing to do with me. Well, here I am, 61 years later, having the opportunity to launch on a rocket named after Alan Shepard. Who would have thought? So with that in mind, when commercial space launches became available, that was the first thing that we started looking into. My husband, I have to give him credit. He takes me out of my comfort zone. Whether we're taking on a jet with the Breitling formation, that's an experience where jets come up 10 feet off of your wing. There's one above you, one below you, and they're all jockeying for positions. And then we break out and we got to fly it and we flew inverted and we did rolls.
Wow.
That really prepares you for space. And these opportunities, you just never know what. Take it. If something crosses your path, take it. You never know where it's going to lead you. But that started our 16-year journey. And I think that's very important. Like Jose Hernandez says with NASA, never give up. It's not an overnight success. You have to keep on plugging.
Yeah, incredible. I mean, you first starting off with your earlier points, which is changing the narrative of flying to space in the media is so incredibly important. I think it's great that we're getting so much media coverage with the space launches that are happening because, as you said, you saw Alan Shepard fly to space, and it got that idea on the back of your mind about space and doing these commercial launches. I'm sure so many kids are starting to see, oh, hey, more people are going to space. What is this whole industry about? And are starting to think about it, which is great. But also helping the media realize the importance of doing these launches and trying to advance the industry, as well as how accessible it can become in the future if we all work together, is just so important to make sure the general public can understand and not just keep it in a bubble in the space industry. That communication and that outreach is so important. But also just hearing your story, and especially what you said about like just take every opportunity. I love that advice, just like never give up, but also if something comes along your way, just take those risks. I know it can be like super scary, but I think I love that advice. Just take everything that comes your way. And so in this journey, you mentioned it wasn't easy. It takes a lot of hard work. And so did you have obstacles in your journey? And if so, how were you able to overcome them? I think someone like myself, someone who looks greatly up to you, like looks at your LinkedIn or looks at the work you're doing and thinks, "Oh, that's so easy. Like she did it. Like she just is amazing. Like she just knew what she was doing all along." But I'm sure like there was a bigger like journey behind that. And I'm sure there was a lot of work, a lot of back and forth between different things. So I'm curious to hear a little bit more about what that journey was like for you, but more importantly, how you were able to overcome those obstacles and what advice you have for other young professionals who might be embarking on a similar journey.
I have an opportunity to sit on the advisory council for Purdue Engineering. And one of the assignments they asked me to do is to talk to different women, girls, and see what are some of the challenges. And I would say the first thing is not being taken seriously. I've spoken to several CEOs of major retail women, and that's their number one, or being talked over. We see that every day. It's also in the space industry too. But I think being being able to have the confidence, even if you don't, pretend you do, and just push through.
I think so many times it's so easy, especially like in the heavily STEM, or male dominated industries. I've heard this from a lot of young girls. I've actually talked with a few of like the Brooke Owens fellows and a few other, incredible women in the STEM fields and a lot of male dominated industries. And that's something very common. It's like, oh, I'm the only girl in the room, usually at a conference, or I'm the only girl in my, calculus class or physics three, quantum mechanics class. And we've come so far, yet we still have so much more to go. I think we are as women need to obviously uplift each other, but also I think the idea of making sure that you believe in yourself first is the most important. Sometimes just exuding that confidence can go such a long way for people to believe in your words and to help take you seriously. So I think believing in yourself first, as you mentioned, is the most important piece, and then other people will start to believe you. If you exude that confidence, other people around you will automatically want to trust what you're saying.
Well, and that's what I'm talking about, pushing through. We've learned that statistics that women in engineering, once they get out in the corporate world, that the longevity is like a year. And the challenge is isolation. And I think this is the perfect time for we as girls and women to help each other, to support each other, to be there. And when you've got that, I give up, and then you have another person that comes in and says, you can do this, you got this. That makes all the difference in the world. I know with us, out of the 8 billion people on this planet, my husband was a gentleman, so he let me go first. So I became the 599th person to cross over the Kármán line. He was the 600th. But more importantly, I was the 73rd woman. And that was just 2 years ago. So this has been 62 years, 63 years. We need to get more women involved. Definitely.
Definitely. I think especially like the fellowships, like the Brooke Owens Fellowship, that's what they're targeting towards creating a community, finding those mentorship relationships, but also even just seeing yourself in others. I think when you see these women leaders who are doing such incredible work in their respective fields and who are dominating, going to top positions in different fields, engineering or non-engineering, being able to see their role models and highlight their stories just as equally as much as we highlight male stories is so important. I think seeing is always believing, as many say. And as we start seeing all these, astronauts like yourself, Sarah Sabry, she was the first African woman to fly with Blue Origin. Seeing women like that and seeing what they're doing can inspire so many young girls in different locations to believe that they can become like those women as well. So yes, I think uplifting women is so important, but also we as a society need to start we are working towards it, but we can do a better job of continuing to bridge that gender gap that we're still seeing today in many male dominated fields. And so
I'll,
now that oh yes, go ahead.
I'll share a short story. It's actually very funny. Uh, we were years ago at a dinner with the mayor of Orlando, and we were introduced to her, and it came up that Mark and I were going to space, and she kind of rolled her eyes and went, "Ooh, okay." And then we became really good friends. And so once we were launched, she went on video saying, "Yeah, I used to think they were crazy, but their dreams came true." And I think that's very important. It's okay to be different.
Yeah, I think I love that because I always like I mentioned I want to become an aerospace physician, maybe be the first doctor on Mars. And I've had people kind of give me the glare like, "Oh, like you want to be a space doctor? What is that? Like is that a real career? Or, you want to go to Mars? Like is that something to realistically dream about?" And then sometimes it's like, dream big, like go crazy. I think it's always good to have these big dreams that you work towards because it'll push you to be a better version of yourself. So I agree. I mean, a lot of people maybe give you the side eye, but having one or two people who do believe you and having that confidence in yourself as you push yourself to get to those goals is so important. So thank you for sharing that. And on that note, actually, now that you're able to learn a little bit about your journey as well as some of the work that you are doing, my last and final question is, you've given plenty of advice just right now, you did, but if you had to go back in time and give your younger self a piece of advice when you were, a budding young professional or maybe even a student, what advice would that be?
Oh, let's see. I think my number one advice would be being different is a gift. You don't have to walk the same walk. Your walk is going to be different to get your goals and what you are here to achieve. I think you need to know that 95% of the people are motivated by fear. Fear of public speaking, fear of being successful, it goes on and on. I would suggest that everyone get comfortable with public speaking. That was a huge change in my life. And I was a latecomer. I didn't start doing this until probably about 3 years ago. And I was scared to death when I first started. And now what they say is true, the more often you do it. I find it very interesting now that elementary school kids are now being taught how they have to get up in front of the class and be comfortable doing public speaking. That is a huge relief and credit for the things that you're going to do in the future. You might not think you need that, but believe me, having that under your belt very young is going to be beneficial. The other thing I would say is use your social media. One of the things I learned in media training is that if you're on LinkedIn and you see someone doing an article or speaking about an item that you're interested in, send them a message. Start to build relationships. If they write an article and it's in the paper, write back. "I read your article. This was what impressed me." Start building relationships. I think that's what's missing in today's education, because it's still knowing somebody that's going to help you. I didn't get to space just because I wanted to go to space. It was a team of people along the way that helped us be able to achieve our goals. And it's not an overnight success. You have to put the time in. And like I said, if you don't succeed on the first time, try again. Jose, my friend at NASA, they just did the movie about his life. He was rejected from NASA 11 times. And every time he was rejected, he would say, "Okay, why wasn't I qualified?" Well, he wasn't a scuba diver, so he went out and did scuba lessons. He couldn't fly, so he took pilot lessons. Every obstacle they put in front of him, he accomplished it. So the world is your oyster and nobody's limited by space anymore. It's open for everyone. Space is for everyone. Come and see and enjoy it.
That's the best, that's the best way to wrap up this interview. You mentioned so many incredible points. I mean, first off, with the public speaking aspect, and, being different is okay. And actually, it's appreciated. It's good to be different. It's good to have different goals. Find your own career path. I read this article the other day saying within the next 10 years, we're going to have so many new jobs that are not existing today. So make sure you can just adapt your skills and dream big. I think nothing is too crazy. And also what you mentioned about making sure that you use social media to your advantage. I actually am a living proof of this. Neither of my parents are in the space industry. Both of them are immigrants from India. And when I wanted to start Ignited Thinkers in middle school, I had no idea where to begin. And I had no idea how to turn this idea I had into a nonprofit or how that works. And how can I make this impact that I have in my mind? And I created LinkedIn once I turned 13, and I started connecting with folks and sharing my ideas and started cold emailing like 50 different organizations and reached out to people who were doing similar things on LinkedIn. And that's how I was able to form some of the best mentors I have today and find myself having a small place in this industry. 5 years ago, I didn't know anybody, but now I'm starting to find some really cool people in the industry like yourselves, other incredible individuals that I've interviewed, and it's all because of LinkedIn. I don't know any of these people in real life, but social media has enabled me to connect with all these folks who I never could have dreamed of speaking to. I mean, I could have never dreamed of speaking to an astronaut like a few years ago. So I think taking social media to your advantage and building those connections, forming that community who believes in you and believes in your work, and has synergies with similar initiatives that they're doing is so incredibly important. So I can definitely testify that social media like LinkedIn has changed my life and it can change anyone's. So thank you so much, Ms. Hagle, for taking your time to share your story, your experience flying to space, as well as your advice for students. I mean, I was incredibly inspired, and I'm sure every single person who's listening to this interview will be inspired as well. I truly had a great time speaking with you and hope that I can even meet you in person one day.
Well, thank you again. And to all of you, I really appreciate this opportunity to share my story and how we can be helpful once we're back on Earth. So I look forward to seeing you guys in space.